members for your availability. We don't have any public comment, but Mr. Cash, would you like to recognize your special guests in the audience? Dan, can you turn on your mic, or can we put this mic on?
Yeah. That's Lorraine, Easton, Xander, Britton, and Harrison. And they just couldn't wait to get here.
I'm sure that's true. Welcome, guys. Okay, we will, as we said, no public comment. We will have to approve our agenda. We can do this, as always, by voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Oh, take attendance.
I'm sorry. I skipped the attendance part. So we do need to record attendance. So let's go back to press your buttons on your devices, and then Claire, I will call on you in a minute.
All right.
Dr. Reeves?
Present.
All right. Where's her iPad?
There are 9 members present.
Thank you. Okay, now back to approval of the agenda. Let's do that one more time, just for the record. All in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the agenda is approved. Let the record reflect Dr. Reeves voted aye.
All right, just leave it on.
All right, new business. So as everyone is aware, the reason we are doing this is because the County Commission met today, and as expected, they amended the county budget and also our budget as a result of that to reduce the insurance expense by $500 per full-time equivalent. So we therefore had to come meet today to amend our budget to align with those new numbers that were approved. So we will go through 3 items, our 3 respective budgets: the general fund, the central cafeteria fund, and the extended school fund, to make those necessary modifications. So the first item is approval of the 25-26 school board budget amendment corresponding to the county commission's reduction of the general purpose school fund. Do I have a motion? A motion and a second. Any discussions or questions? And I might just defer to Mr. Golden to give a little bit of commentary on what the county commission did and some context around that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we discussed at the work session and at our voting meeting, the County Commission ultimately did exactly what we expected them to do with our budget. They had some debate, they had some motions back and forth, but ultimately they reduced their request of us for health insurance by that $500 per full-time equivalent. The total for that brings our general purpose school fund budget from $565,306,797 down to $562,612,797. So they went through that entire process. I did want to let you all know that they did one additional change related to their budget. The sheriff's office, they asked for some additional funding for pay raises for them over and above the 4% that was the budget parameter. After much debate, the county commission approved that for the sheriff's office, and then another motion came on to try to increase county government employees by some amount based on a study that they had done, I'm going to estimate about 6 months ago, a pay study. That failed in the morning, but after the lunch break, they came back and 2 commissioners said that they had voted erroneously and that they brought it back, and it did pass. So I did think it was important for you all to know, as the county school board, that they ultimately funded about $1.3 million more for sheriff's office pay and about $1.1 million more for county employees beyond that 4%. So I will tell you, Mr. Chair and board members, that's unprecedented in my experience in 20 years of budgets that I've worked on to some degree or another. I am going to recommend that you approve this, but because of that and because of county government's employees getting a different pay from the county commission on the floor today, I think we're going to have some more discussions with county government over these next few months about where that leaves the schools. Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to give you that additional detail, but for purposes today, I do think it's important for us to approve this item.
One question that brings up for me, having listened to a little bit of that on the way back in the car, is they kept referring to the exception, that motion they made on those increases was excluding WCS, and we knew there's a reason why they were doing that, because we have a separate pay plan that's in place, that perhaps the implication was the county government doesn't have that same kind of pay plan. Is that a fundamental difference that is that a fair assessment of that, and does that change anything in terms of how we would recalculate our compensation?
Mr. Chair, it's accurate, but it's not a fair assessment because it's not complete.
Okay.
So they actually did a pay study with some comps. They actually had a private company come and do their analysis and compare them to some comparables. We don't know all the detail of that comp plan. Our teacher pay structure is different because we have a state base, but we actually pay more than the state base. So that is different. And there's another key difference is when we do pay increases for teachers, we have an obligation to speak with our teacher, with our teacher association. So there are some differences, but fundamentally on the revenue side, our longstanding practice with the county commission is that they have ensured that that if they have a particular increase, that there's a commensurate funding for schools related to that, and this is different.
All right, so can you restate the dollar amount that we're reducing in this particular amendment, the dollar amount we'd be reducing our budget?
Thank you. Reducing it from $565,306,797 to $562,612,797.
Okay. Any questions or comments about this amendment? Mr. Galbraith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Jason or Rachel, can we just briefly state the two items between the insurance and on the expense side, and then the revenue side with how we're budgeting for property tax revenues? I just want to be clear on what makes up that difference.
Thank you for that. I'll defer to Rachel after I speak to it if there's anything she needs to add. Traditionally, county government and we have budgeted on the revenue side 92% of property taxes as a revenue. In other words, projection based on you receiving 92% of what is taxed. That is not actually part of a vote. It's just a projection for how you budget. So county commissioners talked about that a lot today. The work that they went through at the budget committee to make these budgets balance, and you all may recall that for these budgets to balance originally, it would have taken 5 cents on the tax rate for county government and 5 cents on the tax rate for us. So they were looking to find a way to shrink those pennies from that total 10 cents. They proposed changing, and they did change, from a 92% revenue percentage on the property tax to that 94%. On the school side, that brought the budgets closer by about 2 pennies. And I don't know off the top of my head for the county side what that would have done. And so Rachel, so ultimately with their vote, county government has budgeted based on 94% receipts from that property tax. A little bit extra information related to that. Traditionally, the receipts tend to be somewhere between 97 and 98% most years. To date, it's been somewhere around 95 this past year, but then over these next few months, it'll get tighter and tighter, closer to that 100.
So
Rachel, I'm sorry.
Number-wise, originally when we brought the budget to the commission, it was about a $12.5 million gap. So by budgeting 94% in revenue, 94% of property tax revenue, our revenue projection went up by about $12.5 million. However, we had sales tax that went down by $1.6 million. We did get our number. We haven't gotten the final, but with TISA, The May estimate showed the correct fiscal capacity. And so we are getting about $1.2 million more from the state than what was originally budgeted. So overall revenue is up about $12.5 million, with the sales tax being down 1.6 and others. So having said that, our fund balance also, projected fund balance was down a couple of million from where it was when we originally projected. All of that to say, insurance was $2,694,000. In order to balance between the additional revenue and the reduction in the medical insurance, that got you to where we have a balanced budget now. And that's what you're voting on tonight.
So with this budget, assuming with all those revenue assumptions, we've got a surplus of 1.8. Is that the?
Yes, at the moment, but again, I think we had the same conversation last year. Until we actually close out, that can go down. So not, and the state has said, we need to keep a little bit more in fund balance if possible.
Right.
And so, yes, that's what's showing on your paper right now.
So if I may, you accurately described that 1.8 based on those projections. Two issues related to that I think is important for you all to be aware of. Number one, the value of a penny now is about $2.7 million. It used to be right around 1.8 last year. So now it's about, let's call it 2/3 of a penny. Also, that works for this budget year, but the next budget year there will be less fund balance to fund the subsequent budget. So my perspective on it, not being an accountant, is it's a 1-year fix.
Well, and that was going to be. I just want to set expectations for next year because it is a one-time windfall of a couple million. Whatever. Is it $12 million for us? Is that what the 2% is? So, because typically when you're having budget fixes, you use one-time windfalls for single expenses. So it's a great way to pay for a capital project that's not going to happen again. It's a lousy way to pay for a operating budget that's going to recur next year and you have no funding source for it. So all we did was borrow from next year, and we've got to, and we can't kick that can down the road next year. We can't. I think Phoebe said that she's not willing to go above 94 because now we're reduced. All we're doing is borrowing from our ending fund balance, right. And so next year we start out $5 million in the hole, essentially.
I think that's an accurate description. And the county commission had this same debate, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was a motion to fund the pennies on the tax rate sufficient to stay at that 92%. And it failed.
It was 9 to.
Was it
9 yes and.
Yeah, 9 yes and
13 or 12
yeah,
or however
I think
many.
I think it may. Yeah, I think they had 22 people at that time, so it would have been 13 no's. So they're split over this issue as well.
Thank you.
Just to give a little more context to that, Ms. Farmer, remind us how much we are using from the current fiscal year in fund balance to roll into this next budget that we're about to vote on to make it work.
Our projected fund balance as of today is $66 million. We have to keep a 3% of our operating expenses. So $16 million, right at $17 million of that has to be kept, which means we are essentially using right at $50 million to balance the budget out of fund balance.
So just to Jay's point, 50 million rolling over from one year to the other this time, that number that we're going to have available to roll over next time is going to be less, potentially substantially less.
Correct.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now the variables that we don't know yet are new housing, any increase in property taxes, sales tax, So we'll be having all these discussions next year, presumably with a tighter fund balance.
Mr. Welch.
Thank you. So, quite a set of curveballs tonight. I mean, we knew about the reduction. We knew that was coming. Health insurance can plan for that, but some of this stuff is really surprising. If I could make sure I understand it and kind of dumbing it down to my non-accountant language, but essentially it sounds like we're living paycheck to paycheck going forward rather than having our savings account to to be able to rely back on. Is that a overly simplified, fair analogy?
I think that's a good way to describe it, an overly simplified, fair analogy.
Okay. Also glad we got the cash links here tonight, as I think it's a nice little reminder of what we are, at the end of the day, we talked about all the numbers and policies and everything else, but at the end of the day, this is kind of what we're here for, and I will say, kids, you can be proud that you are better behaved than your grandfather is most of these board meetings, so let him know that as well. Kidding, of course. But, Jason, yeah, I'm glad you want to carry on the conversation. This is extremely disappointing to hear about the 75 percentile for all county employees, except for Williamson County Schools, and the differentiation in pay raises having double, I think, 4 versus 2 is what it is, or thereabouts?
It's not double.
Okay.
Their 4% would have been about $5.6 million. We actually did a double check on that after their meeting. And so it's somewhere between 1% and 2% more, instead of a 4% aggregate increase, it's somewhere between a 5 and a 6% aggregate increase on county pay.
Versus the 2.
Oh, for us,
Yeah.
we took an aggregate 4% and we distributed it based on our pay. So some are getting 2, some teachers are getting substantially more than that. We've added money to supplements.
I got you.
So our aggregate is 4%.
I got you. But either way, we're sort of been singled out as the one part of
That's right.
county employees that are not getting the same growth, the cost of living adjustments, the increase, the 75th percentile, which is very disappointing. And then also to your point about having just sort of these decisions made on the fly, as they are. This budgeting has been going on for months. So, either when you do drastic changes like this, I kind of question, is it, do you not think it's a big deal, or to, not pay our employees, or is it just you not care, or are you just sort of winging it? And I don't know the answer to that. And, for the sheriff's office to get, a even bigger adjustment beyond that, law enforcement is certainly very important, but at the cost of education, it almost seems to be a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. If you're going to, I was thinking, the old, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. You're going to balance the education of our future generation and leverage that with, law enforcement, and sort of dictate as that is the most important thing. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point that, yeah, you're going to need more law enforcement if you're going to keep cutting education in this community. I would make the argument that the quality of education is what keeps the crime rates low here. So all this to say, I'm on board with what we're doing today, but I think it's definitely some conversation that we need to continue having, and our teachers shouldn't be getting the short end of the stick, and we shouldn't be balancing the county budget on their backs.
Thank you for that. I will tell you all, I have had, just in the last 2 hours, right after the commission finished their meeting, if I'm not mistaken, they finished at about 3:30 or so. I've had conversations, one-on-one conversations with multiple commissioners already who were on both sides of that vote. What can we do about the schools? Now, they didn't talk about that during their voting meeting. We had that conversation after.
Any other questions on this amendment? Okay, we are ready to vote. Dr. Reeves, how do you vote?
Yes.
The vote is 9 yes, 0 no.
Okay, the amendment is approved. We will move to the Central Cafeteria Fund. Similar budget amendment correspond to the county commission's budget reduction. Mr. Golden?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rachel also prepared the same commensurate change for the Central Cafeteria Fund. The numbers for that are from your prior approval of $20,827,302 to $20,749,302. So we do recommend approval for that change as well.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, we're ready to vote. Dr. Reeves, how do you vote?
Yes.
The vote is 9 yes, 0 no.
The amendment is approved. The final item is the extended school program. Likewise, an amendment to correspond to the county commission's reduction of the budget. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The original number was $8,077,174. We do propose and recommend that you reduce that to $8,045,674.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Galbraith.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Farmer, what would, if this budget happened exactly as it sits today, what would our ending fund balance be at the end of
For the extended school care fund, or
for the end of school? Yeah,
you said the end of school, but the extended school care
the
fund?
extended
That-
school program.
The estimated fund balance, it says March 18th. Theirs is running pretty flat, so when I looked at it, it was right at still 1.5 million.
So our fund balance today is 1.5 million, and then so the surplus that we have, would that add to the 1.5 million? Or are we using that to fund our bill?
We're using that to
and then
fund, so the ending is about $1 million.
About $1 million. Okay, that's what.
I'm sorry,
So
yes.
we're budgeting for our fund balance to go down by $500,000 roughly.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, ready to vote. Dr. Reeves, how do you vote?
Yes.
The vote is 9 yes, 0 no.
Okay, the amendment is approved. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Thanks, everyone, for making the time for this meeting, and we're adjourned.